Okay. Perfect. So welcome again to Jumpstart workshop number 8. So we'll be looking at the team selection and management. So today it's 25, it's 30 odd slides. But take a step back and reflect on this as you normally do in all the workshop sessions. Don't worry about the notes. This will be sent to you. And now you are part of a team. Whether you liked it or not, you're part of the team. Whether you had the luxury to choose a team yourself, it's good. But either way, you are part of a big team. A big team has, as you can clearly see, we already, there are lots of capabilities that's involved, all the way from business development, sales, to pricing people, solution people, but you're all part of a team. And you all need to work together to get the success here. But one thing is, sometimes you are not allocated in the team, but you still go beyond the limits and you go help somebody. That's also very common. So what that meant is, who are you? Again, take a step back and think, who are the line managers who you love to work with and why? Because it's nothing to do whether they are great on their proposal management, because you just want to work with that person. And I want you guys to be that sort of people who others want to work with you as well, because when you started to lead the projects yourself, because not always you are given the best resources in your company. So having that ability to attract people inside your company, whether they work for you, whether they don't work for you, whether they're paid to do that, or whether they are giving 1 hour, 2 or 5 hours of your time, means it's entirely up to you to do that. So it's not covered in this, but I thought I'll share that with you. So primarily what happens is, these are theory. Let's move on. Okay, steps to build an effective team. Number 1 is, you have a team in place. The kickoff happens and you allocated a resource, but this is where you understand the requirements, and then you decide as a big manager or a big director, these are type of resources I need. But for that to happen, you need to understand the project. So what are the project parameters? And that will require the likely team selections. Again, in your company, how is it being done? At what point do they allocate resource? We touched on the governance in Tuesday. Some companies automatically allocate when the bid, no bid decision comes up, you are allocated X resource. When you go to the next level, you are shortlisted to the next, you are allocated a pricing resource and a big manager. But in your company, how does the whole process work? At what point do they allocate? And if you are the person who's involved to get that, how is it being done? As I mentioned, a project manager, again, this is targeted towards big leadership, where you are appointing a project manager, whereas in your case, you might be chosen already by somebody else. So either way, how do you choose a person? How is the person being chosen? Based on the skills, because he's very good on proposals, very good on bid management, or is it based on he has a sector expertise? He is a master in that particular geography, in that particular sector. He has won lots of bids. How is he planning to do around it? The next one is, just take a step back. You are allocated, there are so many other resources, but how are you going to pick and choose the best executive and managers who could contribute to make a difference? This is where your soft skill comes up. This is where, if ideally, in many companies, they might have a big ticket team, which has the A team. As I mentioned what happens is the strategic bids are given the best resources, and the routine bids are given not just the best resources, people who can manage themselves, people who can do that end to end themselves tend to get routine bids. So at what point? So in some companies, they will make it in a way that, oh, you want to be part of a big ticket team, then you just do all these stuff. So how is your team structured? Do you have a big ticket team? Do you have a routine team, or anybody does everything? If that's the case, how can you elevate yourself to be part of the elite team? Even if it doesn't happen, believe me, every company has an A team, but they won't tell you. So now you're part of that. Supplement the team with experts to cover gaps. Now next step is, you have allocated a resource. A project manager has been chosen. You are the project manager, for example. You are given one resource, but now you just need to go and recruit the other resource. At what point do you recruit? Who do you recruit? What's available? So that you can win this bid. Again, I don't know how your company is structured, but in the next few slides, I'll just give you some flavor around it. Sometimes you would say, I don't have any resource, I'm going external to some other company, and you engage some other company and they come step and they do the work. or their external company is only coming in to do support resource. But either way, ability to recruit the needed specialists and experts, complete the project. I mentioned this as a single line, but that's very hard. Again, in your company, see how that's being done. But if you are given the task, how do you plan to do yourself? The next step is, now you are given all the resources. How are you going to actually manage the team's performance? Because your focus is, okay, take it. You have asked for all these resources. I've given a project manager. I've given a team. I've got given an extended team. And you're also given a few projects to go for. Fine. So what happens here is, the important point here is you are given a resource, you're given a team, but you're focused on the proposal. You're focused on the proposal, you're focused on the governance of the proposal, you're focused on the customer's clarification question. Nobody is actually going to tell you this is how you manage a team. In addition to, there is no governance, there is no processes on how things going to happen. But in your own way, again, think from your expertise, how have you done that? What sort of meetings you had? How have you communicated with your team? And how have you set goals for them? How do you monitor on their behalf? So primarily, it's not set on stone. It entirely depends on the character of you, on the character of your team, how you kind of have the leadership. But if you have the choice, this is how I would do 4 steps to create a high performance team. So number 1, you have a bid. Forget about the bid, forget about the proposal, forget about the process for now. Set the objective. This is a must-win bid. The reason it's a must-win bid is X, Y, Z. And I want you to be part of this, and I want you to succeed and grow with the company, grow with the bid. This is your role. This is your responsibility. This is your line. And this is how you're going to work together on this. You're going to lead this. I'm going to lead this. You're going to delegate this. I'm going to delegate this. Together, we are going to sit and discuss this. Again, me living in UK, who's not from UK, there's also cultural barriers that I need to face. And the same thing anybody who worked with me have faced as well. So with how I approach, I wouldn't ask any question for the first 5 years of my career. I won't even speak in my meeting because I thought it's not great to ask question to your boss. So I just shut up and I work. It's not right, but gradually I build the confidence to do it. So there might be lots of cultural things. Again, these are soft leadership elements. Then you allocate what's the best way to work with them. So this is, you might be wondering why I bother. This is why you find most of the proposal managers, I can say that honestly, will never be good leaders because they don't have the interpersonal skills. Very much process driven, they're very much proposal driven, but this is an entirely different ballgame because you need to build a lot of soft skill, and you need to move away from what you've known into be just yourself and bring everybody together with your journey to have this. So how are you going to do this entirely depends on that, but the whole structured process that you're going to set is very unique. As I mentioned, the simplest form I do that is I just give them that book, that $11 book, and tell them, here we go, guys, document this, and let's sit down and discuss what we have done this week. On the kickoff meeting, what meetings, other meetings, what have we learned, what have we not learned. It's just there so that it's very simple for me at the end of the day or end of the week, 15-minute stand-up meeting. Individually, they share the details, they've documented it, and it just goes on. As I mentioned, on the review stage. But in your case, how do you approach it? Because team management is very different. How do you approach it in addition to getting the pressure from the customer, getting the pressure from your company? How do you go for that? Over the years, if you start to do it, you will build up your own way of working. You build up your own way of approaching people, getting the best from the guys and giving them the best opportunity as well. The biggest thing is you can get the best out of your team, but when they ask you for help, when they ask you for support, how much strength do you have in go and fight for them? Again, that's another thing which again nobody will teach you, which is like, here we go, I'm doing 18 hours a day, I'm doing 14 hours a day, but the last thing you want to do that is but by the way, I can only give you 1% pay hike. There is, the company didn't perform, it's COVID-19, I need to restructure. It always happens, but how can you give them how can you give them the best out of it? And we will touch some of the elements. As you can clearly see, not everybody, we can go deeper. There is at least 10 different modules which we will touch a part of the big leadership thing. One of the things that you will face time and time again is you will face difference of opinion in your team. You start a bid, you are working through the bid, suddenly somebody will say, I don't agree with your viewpoint, I've done this for a very long time, who are you, what do you do, all the stuff. Or somebody will say, I can't do this work, I'm busy, I have some other projects that's been allocated for you. You just need to be ready to focus on what's good for the project above anybody's interest. And you should be in a position to know at what point to escalate, what point can you manage yourself. And if you escalate, what triggers that escalation. It is important. And the next one you would find is, in addition to that, you'll also find some role conflicts. This happens so many times in my career, where you'll be given, when you're allocated a position, especially when your boss allocates you a role and you're starting to do the role, somebody else comes and tells you that's not your role, I'm already working on it. So again, as a team leader, role conflicts are very, very common. But how are you planning to sort it out depends on how much you have a structure in place very early on that tells you this is what you do. It could be you are doing 5 questions. It could be you are only involved on governance. It could be you are only involved on reviews, or it could be you just collect the inputs, let the person write. I don't know. But if the project objectives are not clear from you, then that again comes up with its own thing. That you don't need to go deeper and deeper on this. These might look slightly boring. These might look slightly, I know this already, but believe me, these are some of the things that's going to come and hit you. Next one is changing project environments. Business environments always changes, as you already seen. Your structure changes while you're working on a bid. COVID happens, your team gets furloughed off, or you're losing your leader because that he's been taken out for some reason. So changing the project, changing the scope, changing the objectives, even at some point the resources are pulled. This can drastically affect the functioning of your team. But again, having the thing of, I'm only going to do this now, and the team is working extra hard. When half of your team is furloughed off, the other half of the team works extra hard, even though they're working from home. You will be doing the same yourself. How quickly can you manage that yourself? And I don't need to go, there is always a politics that's involved in any company. It could be leadership, or it could be even an own team. How are you planning to approach that? Now, all these are kind of little checklists, and the answer is there in addition to the question. So what I do that is we just take a promise that this is what we are going to do, and we just have an informal catch up on a Friday to understand what's the pain points, what the others are pain points, and you just go for it, because you don't have the time or the the effort, or even the mind to actually sit and listen to like 30 odd people or 10 odd people to listen to what their problems are, because you're already full on this. At the same time, empathy is the highest leadership skill. And how are you going to structure yourself to do the whole thing? So, and that will come across pretty big as a credibility of you as a leader, because nobody teaches you, by the way. That's what even I'm trying to visualize it from my life, than how I'm actually going to say this is the leadership style best for the big team. Nobody is going to do that. And there are so many times, again, there might be some technical judgments on the way you use yourself, use your resources, use the supplier, use anybody, or there must be some lack of experience that you might face yourself on the way. Suddenly you might be a high flyer given the leadership skills to go for it, but having the ability to create your own mentors around you and helping you to select and manage the team will also be critical. These will be sent to you part of the checklist, but for now, just let's just go through that. Again, one thing that breaks in a bid in the overall team management is how good are you in your communication. Again, I think I've said 3-4 times already, having at least some time that's allocated that's non-bid related inside the kickoff call, or not the kickoff call, in your team meetings will work wonders, because most of the time actions response, actions, response, actions, response. You don't understand what the other person is doing, but you don't have the time to do it. So we normally go with, okay, anything by exception. Anything by exception is, if everything goes okay, don't even tell me. If everything is not okay, then tell me. Then by the time, what else is happening? You just have the 10-15 minutes, either one-to-one or 10-15 minutes as a team, to understand why the motivation is low, why the morale is low, and if there is any carelessness that's happening. So there is always, the metric says, 3 people, if you give the task to 10 people, 3 people will do the job, 3 people won't do the job, and the other 3 to 4 people will only do when you push them. That's a fact of life. So if you have given 10 people in your team, if you're lucky, all 10 is working as per your instructions, you're great. But you need to be prepared that 3 won't even try, because they won't even try. When I mean by that, the other 3 on the top will cover these 3 people who are not doing, and the other 3 or 4 in between, you need to have a lot of time to ensure that they get what they're doing. In a tight bid cycle, it's not going to be happy. And the other thing is, it's not just about downward management. How are you planning to do upward management? There is so much here to consider. That's what it scared so many people to come out and become big. But once you start to go for it, you will start to do it pretty quickly. Because again, we already saw that senior management or board doesn't like surprises. Having unclear issues, going back to them for something that you can solve yourself, going back to something that genuinely you need a help, it's always good. But sometimes you need to be also prepared that you might not get enough support from the senior management, and you just need to get on with it and do the job and celebrate the success. As they say, success has many fathers, but when it's failure, it's always 1 or 2 teams. So I've just touched some of the theories, but let's very quickly go through some of the tips that you can go for. But most of it, I already have touched it. Number 1, try to blend individual interest with the overall project objectives. If you know your team really well, you can be say, what, this person is very logical. So maybe I will give him tasks that revolves around pricing and contracts so that he come out or solutions. Fully explain the scope of the project and forthcoming rewards and completion to all members. Because people love recognitions, and people love, they don't need physical rewards, but people love to be recognized. In my case, in every company, there is some level of reward scheme, a thank you email. The very important thing that I do on a Friday is I always write it every week, and I just keep it at 4 o'clock. At 4 o'clock individually, I send an email CCing the board or CCing somebody saying that, great work this week from project team X, Y, Z. You did this. Why, this person did, Chris did that, Samantha did that. What it meant is, on a weekly basis, that one email sending to the stakeholders that they perceive are important means that Monday morning when they come back, they're pumped up, they're ready for you. So it's very simple thing, but it worked wonders for me. Next time when I ask for them, they go extra. It's just a simple recognition on a weekly basis, how we can do that, and also be available for them whenever you can. But having the structure of review meetings, having the structure of who's doing what, giving them the tools, templates might sound easy, but you just need to go through that. And the very worst case is these days with the virtual environment. In good old days, in 2010, 2012, until the big team used to be based in the same place, but gradually more automation came up, more process, more structure needs to come out with. The virtual team meant that the environment has changed, which means you're not physically looking at each other, but having the time to understand how your environment is going to work, when you are available, when the other person is available, what work he's done. It's beyond proposals, but having that clear role definition, as I mentioned, from the very early stage, it's always going to help. But it's not going to help. But as I mentioned, the 1 or 2 things that if you allocate that resource, and if that person is working, and if that person is able to do more, what's the little thing that you can give it to the person? If that person is able, but he's unable to do, what does he need to make it happen? So it's a leadership trait, but again, it's something that you have to go through it. And I'm sure most of you already have gone through that. but use this session to reflect on what worked, what didn't work, what have you tried that worked for you, and maybe use this time to document that thing which I used for the teamwork. This thing didn't work. Well, you will see the communication comes up again and again and again. A major goal for project leader is just to maintain the continued interest and commitment, not just from the senior management, but also in your own team. When you start a project, there is a lot of funfare, but when the project goes up, when it's especially 3 to 4 months down the line, people loses interest. That's where emails, that's where, having some positive news. There is something called positive focus. If you attend my time blocking webinar, you might know positive focus, which is like before you start a meeting, always have a positive focus. The 5 things that happen positive, share that to every people. Then what's the improvement that we can go and why? Then you talk about your project. What that meant is there is this continued moment of positive focus, whether even though it's not positive, it's still there, but you just keep on adding those things. But what happens sometimes, if you are in if they want to test you out, you are not given the right people in your team. You are given people who are fairly new. Just take them, run it, because this is not a must-win bid for us. We just want to try how far we go on this bid. So you are the project leader, because we don't want to trust you with something important. Take this and see how far you go for. I've experienced few things. Yes, it's heartbreaking, but believe me, you know what? There is money involved. There is a big cost involved. So you have to prove your mantle before you actually go and take it. But what happened here? It's even harder, because when you're working with a new team, getting to know them person is even more important. But what happens here is, the more they feel part of a team, the more they know that even if it's a 2-member team, the more they think. You have to create that aura that says you are part of a bigger project. You are part of a bigger team, and this is how the whole thing is going to be connected. It's always going to help. And the biggest reason leaders fail is their inability to actually share the bigger picture to the team. If you are more of a person who always churns proposal, who cannot connect, why are we doing this bid? Once we do this bid, how is it going to impact the company? How is it going to impact others? If you don't have answers for those bigger projects, you tend to lose the ability of actual leadership, because people like to follow somebody whom they think will go up with you. So every time when you go up, then they will also progress in their career. If you are unable to deliver those things, then unfortunate situation is you might find you doing the same thing, but your colleague, whoever is ambitious enough, might cross the path and might go up front, but it depends, it's a choice. But the point here is this. Number one is you need to build the trust among team members that you are able to deliver this job. There is only 2 ways how you can do that. One, it's your credibility with your own self. And the number 1 is your credibility in your managing your stakeholders and the project in itself. Once that fall in place, everything else will fall in place. Number 2, your decision again in how you are actually making decisions with your team. It could be just very simple as allocating resources, or it could be making strategic bid decisions. How are you planning to do that? How good are you in planning to do that? Because that again will come back from your own experience, your ability to ask for help, your ability to ask to bring the right sort of people inside the team, so that it's a collective decision and you just go and you just do it. Finally, it's not just your project. People talk about lessons learned, but when you're actually running a bid, it's important for you to develop some sort of mechanism to measure the success of the bid, whether it's successful or not, but your ability to make the bid. For example, in the project, you might be given a bid cost to manage. You might be given few external suppliers to manage. So how are you actually utilizing the bid cost, and how successful are you? And can you ask for more? And if somebody tells we are going to cut 20% of your cost, how good are you in taking the bid forward? So all these things meant like there is a lot of feedback mechanisms that you need to set up in your own cycle, where this is the project time scale, it just goes up. Then you have your own time scale of managing the stakeholders that goes up. The brilliant leaders, what they realize is they just allocate proposal to a proposal person. They allocate the internal bid governance, working with the customer, to the bid manager, and all the bid leader does is two things. He manages his senior managers, and he also manages the customer, and the rest of it, he allocates that. He creates his own org structure, and he passes that to the bid manager. Some people report to the bid manager, some people report to proposal manager. So he doesn't have time to work with all the stakeholders in the company. Inside his own team, he just worked through these two trusted people. And the commercial people, if you are external or internals, what it meant is you have a small structure that has a team of 20 odd people, or maybe 7 or 8, but you are nominated or you are in touch every day with 3 or 4 people, and every week you are in touch with few people, and every month you are in touch with other people if your project is slightly longer. Again, having the ability to choose the people around your team at the very early stages will dictate how successful you are in managing the team, because as a single person, not always you will be in a position to run the team yourself. So, and that's why it's important that when your style is important, because the moment you ask a bid manager or a proposal manager to come and work with you, he or she will think multiple ways. What's in it for me? What am I going to learn from you? Or even if I do this project, how am I going to grow from you? So you need to sell it to them. The moment they see it through, then any projects you work, they are going to come with you. But if you are that person who in the very first project they worked with you, utilized them, you progressed yourself, but they weren't able to progress your team, then you are on a tough sell. And you're in a tough sell to get the best team. And even if you get the best team, you will face a lot of teething issues, as we talked about there. Conflict of interest, people won't do the job supposed to do, there will be a lot of skeptical thing. It's about being transparent and telling them, this is it, this is what you get, this is what you don't get, and then you just take it from there. So then, the point about diversity, which is important, culture, gender, age. I'm not going to dwell deeper on that. We are having an entire book, and we can talk about it for 3 hours. But after all these things, people will only see it in the way they see it. And whatever you tell them to do, they will only see that in the way you see it. But how are you ensuring that it happens at the right pace? So when I look into team management, just to think, even before you start your journey of becoming the team leader as a capability leader inside your company, do you have that mantle? But you know what? The best thing is, in your company, there will always be somebody or the few people where you look into and follow the same way as how they approached. You treat people in the same way people treat you. So the way you lead your team will be led by yours. In my career, I was influenced by a lot of people from armed forces, from the defense sector, the discipline, the way they manage their team, the way they fight for their team. Because my boss, they all were admirals, they all were, in the Army, Navy, Air Force. For the first 5 years of my career, the moment they enter, the discipline comes up. And if you don't have the answer, you can't come to a meeting without any preparation. So what that meant is, you see that, then you kind of position yourself, maybe that's the model I need to work with. But then your personality also comes up, apply your own personality inside that. So it would be a good starting point for you. How have you been treated? How you worked in others' project, document them on a journey, and then pick and choose your own way, and you manage your team accordingly. Not always it will work in the same way, but it's important, rather than to say I churned 30 proposals and I won 80% win rate. I'm not bothered about it at all. I don't even talk about my win rate. What I learned from a bid, what's the character that I'm building from a bid, because that's what success is all about. I've changed this, I've tried this, I've learned something new. What am I learning something new? I've learned how to build partners, I've learned how to manage a team, and I've learned to work with internal stakeholders, because that's leadership. And that won't be covered by any of the process or any of the courses, but it's up to you. And how are you going to manage that? Because once you manage that, people like you, whoever you are, would be an example. We inspire others to get into the projects that they want to do. And believe me, the moment the bid happens, as I always talk about the full stack bidding thing, have that confidence to see it through. So you're not just managing a team. Can you take that project and drop it into a contract, and take it from a contract and drop it into real operations? having that experience, end-to-end experience, meant when you come back again to do a bid, your perspective of a bid changes. Again, you become a much more solid, big picture guy that's going to help you to lead more and more bids because you can see in a much different angle. So that's it from me. Again, these are theoretical concepts, but the notes will ensure that you can apply at least 1 or 2 tips from here. So sorry if it was really dry, but I couldn't do much on this. All I've done here is I've just taken some of my experience, added it as the pitfalls, added it as what you can go for it. Hope it was useful. And if there's any questions, please let me know. Let me answer a few questions rather than keep talking. Thank you. Stop.